in social media about haircuts and size and length of hair in secondary schools, we will not tolerate it today, we will not tolerate it tomorrow, and so long as we are molding character. If we give in to hair today, tomorrow it will be shoes, and the next day it will be the way they dress. Therefore, as part of our disciplinary measures, headmasters and GES, you are accordingly empowered to take full control of how students behave on your campuses. So anybody who thinks that your child will walk into any institution of learning as if that child, forgive my words, was to attend a beauty contest, the school environment is not for that purpose and not cut for that purpose, and would not tolerate that as an institution.
Great. So this is an interesting topic I want to just touch on. I think it happened over last week. Yeah, last week, I think on Friday or Thursday, a story came out. So just for the listeners or viewers, Ghana currently has a policy in school that has about, or which talks about the fact that girls especially need to keep their hair short. So if you have a hairstyle like a braid or other hairstyle that's long, you have to cut your hair when you go to high school. It's it's basically that's in the rule policy across board. And it's been happening for the past couple of years. Like it's been there since colonial times, I guess, from the history I've read. But last Friday, last Thursday, a viral video came out, and it was of this video of this young girl who was basically getting her haircut. So it looked like she's going to high school, and she's sitting in a chair getting a haircut, and she's crying. So she's crying because she's getting a haircut. And the end of the video, her hair is all short, and that's kind of it's been causing an uproar, and lots of people are commenting on it and saying that why in 2025 are we or do we still have this policy or rule that girls need to cut their hair when they go to high school? Other countries don't do it. The US, they don't do that. In Europe, they don't do that. Asia, they don't do that. Even some countries in South Africa, Kenya, I think Kenya does it, but South Africa, they don't do that. So right now, the debate or the controversy is why does Ghana still have this rule? And people are saying this is a colonial rule because when the white people came, when the British came, they said, "Hey, natural hair for black people." It's kind of like it's uncouth. It's not well done. It's dirty, and you need to cut your hair. So the question is, or the topic is, why is this still happening in today's modern time? So I thought it was a good subject to talk about, and just gonna talk about this in a way. Um, what do you think about that rule right now? I think it's outdated. I don't know why we still do it. What do you think about it?
Outdated is a nice word, but I think it is harmful in a lot of ways, specifically because I never really hear anybody say that this is for the protection of young girls. I only hear people say this is because of the lack of self-control of older men and boy children. And so when we have this conversation, what scares me about these type of conversations is that it is 2025 and teaching self-control doesn't seem to be a part of the tradition, the culture, the curriculum. And that kind of scares me a little bit because it's almost as if we're saying that it's okay for grown men and boy children to not have self-control, especially sexual control, especially at such a young age, right? And so anytime that I've heard it, they're like, oh, the hair is a distraction to young boys and it's a distraction to older men. Distraction is an interesting word, which I don't think is honest. But what I think about the consequences of this type of thing is, as somebody who has a rough time getting my hair done in Ghana, um, I see the effects of it. I see the consequences of it. And it just because when I go to hair salons, if I'm not going to like an upscale salon where all the diasporans and foreigners go to, if I go to a local salon, majority of the time they turn me away. majority of the time they're like, oh no, we don't do your type of hair, your hair's too long, all these other things. And when I ask questions like, what does that mean? Because I
Yeah.
never been told that even in America. Nobody's ever said your hair type I can't do. Nobody has ever said your hair is too long for me to like no one's ever said I can't do natural hair.
Yeah.
So I started asking those questions, and then when I started realizing that there is a kind of, I think, a majority of women who don't really wear their natural hair out, right? It's either permed or it's cut, or it's in braids, or it's in wigs and things like that. So even the concept of just natural hair is still kind of like a back and forth as well. And what is appropriate natural hair, I guess.
Don't love who you are. And you can only look pretty with buying like Brazilian hair, Indian hair, or something before you can be acceptable in society. We have a problem. You see these girls that are dancing.
Yeah.
The moment, the very hour they leave excess, they go buy Brazilian hair. If you meet 10 people today, 9 have some kind of hair on. That is the sad part for me as a mother and as a woman, and for me as a leader of a nation. When I was back in the US, I'd see the Chinese people, their hair, doesn't matter how their hair look, their face, they are still confident as people. When are we going to have that confidence as Africans? When are we going to realize that our hair, the braiding of her hair in school is part of life? That the girl, when she comes home and goes to work, would have to worry about her hair and how she goes to work with her hair. So learning how to maintain your hair in school and being part of going to school and learning and being able to braid your hair before classes, they are all parts of life. That the people who write the book that we study in school, they don't have to go through this. Why won't we come to the understanding that we have failed?
Yeah, I think you're on point. I think currently in our system, and by the way, I think the Minister of Education, who is a male man, he came out and said that, well, it's the rule
Yeah.
that's the rule. It's going to be in place whether you like it or not. And he kind of made kind of a comment that said that,
Hmm.
it's not a beauty contest. School's not a beauty contest. You're here to study and learn. Which is, again, I think to your point, kind of condescending in a way because it's like you're saying that girls can't walk and chew gum at the same time, that you can get your hair done and still study and learn in the education system, which is ridiculous, again, because in other places, the US, like I mentioned, Europe, those people have like more hairstyles. They get their hair done over the weekend and they're still studying math, science, and doing particularly well. They go on to like get lots of good jobs and everything. So how come in our context, we're saying that, well, if you let this hairstyle go wild or rampant, the girls can't focus in school and it's going to be a distraction. I think it's very, very silly, very outdated, and like I said, it's archaic. And yeah, I think I mentioned before, it's from the colonial aspect of things. So because when the white people came, they said, "Hey, you can cut your hair like us," because we cut our hair short and everything. And having this natural Afro style is, as they said, it's uncouth. So it's kind of surprising that we're still having that mentality, especially in our school systems.
My understanding is that I made some comment and gave a directive. I stand wholly and absolutely behind the directive that the Ghana Education Service must uphold the learning environment and the learning instruction has been important to understanding and improving foundational learning.
You know, I think boys don't get as much, but there was this story about this Rastafarian guy in a school in Achimota. They said that he couldn't cut his hair. He had to cut his hair because that was the
Right.
rule. And I think he took him to court and he won because they say, hey, this is discrimination because he's Rastafarian and that's their hairstyle. That's how they wear it. And he won his case. And he went on to become very, I mean, he's a very smart student. He got a lot of accolades and stuff. And I think that Chimoto School was giving, like, we're proud to have our students, in quotes, get his accolade, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, it's we're still living in a system that's, I don't know, it's very colonial mindset. I don't know why we're not pushing past it. But yeah, I think it's going to be a debate that lingers on. I don't know when or if we are ever going to change that rule, but the debate is still happening.
Of education, I stand for my colleagues, the teachers. In fact, we deserve self-control allowance. Teachers, we deserve self-control allowance, because looking at these young girls nowadays, Charlie, teachers, we are suffering. Ghana teachers, we are suffering. Abai, we deserve self-control allowance, teachers self-control allowance, because it's not easy. It is not easy for a teacher to control himself for 3 good years teaching these kids, because nowadays the kind of food they are eating and the kind of hygiene they are putting on, it makes them look attractive, but they are very young, and it's not easy for us to control ourselves. And the Minister of Education, we are pleading, please. Oh dear, boy, why? Because said they are yeah bro, enkwara no ebi hu ofe papa, enye easy. Until now, me as a teacher, I'm standing for my colleagues, because to have a self-control for 3 good years teaching the kids is not easy. And some people used to tag us that we are the ones spoiling the students. For what reason? How can we spoil these students? Imagine you were a teacher and you don't have self-control. Will you leave them to go like that? Yeah, bro. Enkwara susa.
Condescending for him to like assume that like girl students can't walk and chew gum, but it's more so that he's saying that boy students can. Like, because it's also, again, like, even if the conversation was about vanity now,
Yeah.
why don't you want young girls who for many decades, not just in Ghana but across Africa, are also victims of child marriage? How can you, like, it just doesn't make sense.
No.
Like, it doesn't make sense. The same age group and population who don't go to school, right, are more likely to end up in child marriage.
Very true.
Right. So it's like, so then if you do have the opportunity to go to school, you have to look like a little boy.
Yeah, in a way.
That is a little like, it's a little piercing, because it will always scare me that one thing that colonizers and some African traditions can agree upon is patriarchy and misogyny, right? Like, there comes a point where it's like, even in that, knowing that it's a colonial thing, right? Because white people instilled something like this because their hair had lice, right? Because they didn't know how to manage their hair, because they didn't know how to take care of their bodies and their hygiene, right? So now they have instilled that into the people that they oppressed.
Yeah.
And we don't have lice and we don't have those issues, right? We've been taking care, well, at least I don't think so. But it's like, it's interesting that, again, in these moments of, this is an opportunity for education, right? This is an opportunity to teach hair education. This is an opportunity to teach hygiene education, and more importantly, sex education, I think. And so it's like, to shut all of that down, to say it's not a beauty contest. As a man, he's also admitting that older men look at hair as a form of maturity in women, which still, these are things that have to be corrected, but there is no correction when patriarchy is involved, because what is the term for lack of self-control? What is the concept of that? And I think that's what it is for me. Because then you do this to the young girl, and now when she graduates, she's 18, 19 years old, or 17 to 19 years old, and now she's searching for feminization, but
Yeah.
she just spent all these years being told that femininity is bad,
Yeah.
and it's considered vanity to clean your hair and take care of yourself and care for yourself. So now I often get confused on what is the goal for women in the country, and what really is the empowerment conversation. Um, because like I said, I see the situation. I experience it when I'm then in Ghana. The way that people respond to my hair, it is very similar to how a white person would, even though I've never had negative experiences with white people with my hair because I don't live in white environments and don't go to white schools. But from what I've heard, for people who like went to hair salons and they had white people who didn't want to touch their hair and stuff like that, I see a lot of that. When you say you wonder what it will take, I'm gonna be honest with you. There's international schools and private schools in Ghana, we know,
Yep.
and their students don't have to do that.
Yep.
Mixed race Ghanaians don't have to do that.
Very true.
Like, you know what I mean? Diasporans don't have to do that, even if they have their child in a public school. I know diasporans who have their children in a
The
public
public.
school in Ghana, and they don't have to cut their hair,
Very true.
right? And even on top, but again, I think that that also causes envy, and I think that that will cause tension, because when anybody that is looking at another person in their country being able to have some type of privilege or do things that they can't do, you're
Mhm.
going to be mad about that. That
Yeah.
it's a natural feeling. So I'm just curious on what type of empowerment do they genuinely think will come from that, and do they just not care how it affects the self-esteem of Ghanaian women, and if the goal is probably to not want Ghanaian women to um have that connection with themselves, because if you teach them that femininity is vain and these things are vain and this is vanity, then I can now understand why some people feel the way that they do and feel scared to express themselves in any capacity, because
Yeah.
I mean, in your formative years, you were told that it's a distraction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very accurate. As you were saying, it's kind of the whole patriarchy thing, because the people who are actually setting the rules are mostly men, and that's what. And the thing is, even the female authorities are doing the same thing and saying, "Well, this is what I went through in high school. I cut my hair, so therefore you have to go through the same system, cut your hair when you get out." And I've seen public comments from women saying that, well, yeah, you have to be disciplined and cut your hair in school because you're going to be distracted. And I don't know how that comes from. Again, women can do multiple things with their hair and still be, function members of society, whether in school or, universities in place. So I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how it's going to change. But as you said, we need to start looking at education and even looking at our history, because in historical time, women were having, hair in different hairstyles, and they were still functioning members of society. So why are we still having this conversation now? I don't know. I don't know how it's going to change, but again, a lot of issues to crush, patriarchy, colonial mentality. We'll have to dig deep into that, but I think we can move on to the next topic, or else we'll stay
Yes.
here. Yes. So move on to the next topic. Things are happening in the West African region, other African countries. So Cameroon is having its elections, or had its elections, about, I think, a week and a half ago. I think it was on a Monday or Tuesday. The results haven't come out yet. They're supposed to come out tomorrow, I think I heard. But for context, they have a president who is 92 years old, and he's been ruling the country for the past 40 years, because Cameroon has no term limits for presidents. So currently, the opposition leader, he's saying that he's won the elections, and he has the results or the coalition results from the polls to prove it. But what's currently happened is that a lot of opposition leaders in the country are getting arrested, and people are saying that, well, they're trying to rig the election in favor of the current president. But on the other side, Tanzania is also having its election, upcoming election, and they're also having their opposition leaders arrested by the current president. So what's happening in countries which are having elections is that we have a lot of people in power who are trying to kind of coerce the results toward their favor. And the question now is this, are we just seeing more people or more dictators coming up in Africa? Because, democracy was supposed to be a big thing. People could vote in elections, but if they vote and the voters are rigged or the voting is rigged, then what's the point? We're seeing like what happened in Burkina Faso and Mali, and all these, insurrections and all these coups happening. So is Africa, I guess what the kids say, is Africa cooked? Are we going backwards in democracy?
Real quick, y'all, make sure you download my new ebook. It is a travel planner and journal. I made this about a year and a half ago, and it's really, really cool. There are 10 different entries. So as you are on your travel journeys, make sure you download this ebook. It's only $10 and you can get it on my website today. It's interesting because especially like countries like Cameroon and Togo and many, many others that have had a technical, I mean, even Rwanda, right? I mean, it's it's interesting because you see countries that have had presidents who have been president for over 20 years, and some of the citizens are still in favor of them. But then you have other countries like Togo and Cameroon where people are like protesting. I mean, the Cameroon president's daughter came out about a month ago and was
Mhm.
literally like, "Do not vote for my father." I
Exactly.
think that's when you know it's bad, when
Hmm.
someone's child who benefits from all of the uh misguided funds and things like that even comes out to say, "Do not vote for my father again for president." I think that's when you got to kind of listen. And I think for a lot of people outside of the continent, it is kind of confusing because a lot of people don't really, especially with what we're going through in America, where we're about to end up in a dictatorship, right?
Yeah.
And people are not casual about it, but they don't realize how much this is common all over the world,
Yep.
especially on the continent. And I do think that with Captain Ibrahim Traore, I think just younger citizens in Africa are also not just waking up, but just feel more empowered to do the things like protesting
Yeah.
and fighting back. I think that he has ignited another fire because I think that that fire has always been there. But I think, for some people, they were tired and they were, discouraged and things like that. But I think with what's happening now is that people are like, like what are we doing? What is happening if a country like Burkina Faso can rise up that quickly? Um, and even with Burkina Faso being a military coup, we don't see, I think this is probably really the first time in history where a military coup was favored by the citizens,
Yeah.
right? So we're seeing a lot of things happen kind of for the first time, at least in our generation, in our lifetime, that usually the military coup, the citizens are like, no, like this,
Hmm.
that usually is what ends up being the dictatorship.
Yep.
But we're seeing something different, at least right now. I hope that Captain Ibrahim Traore doesn't go down that route, but that's at least what we're seeing now is that he's very much so for the people. And I love that he knew that he had to still go about it that way because it was what was recognizable to some people. But then he completely took the mask off and was like, "Nah, I'm Thomas Sankara." Like, and I think that that was really stand up of him. But I, I'm really curious, like, because in Ghana, you guys have the 4-year term, but I think that wasn't always the case,
No.
right? You had to get up to that point because there were coups and things like that that had happened.
Exactly.
So even that is even interesting, right? Because Ghana's kind of advanced in that way, where there was, Kwame Nkrumah, and then there was the coup, and then there was all these other people that came in, and there was other things that happened to get people in and out of office, and now there's a democracy, right? So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that democracy works, or now seeing with what's happening with Captain Ibrahim Traore, do you think that a lot of these African countries who have had dictatorships for some time may also need to experience that again as well?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, the young people are getting frustrated because they keep we're practicing democracy, 4-year term, we're voting, but what we're seeing is that when people come to power, they kind of enrich themselves. I think in Ghana, for instance, even in Ghana, most of the young people are saying they're tired of seeing politicians getting to office, enrich themselves, and then kind of bankrupt the country. Because like we went through an IMF deal some years ago. $3 billion. That's a lot of money, and we've been going through that cycle and period to the point where we're asking ourselves, why does this keep happening? Maybe we should go back to a dictatorship, and that's what people are saying on the ground or just on social media. Some people don't want that because they've gone through that aspect, but young people are just tired. They want somebody to come in and say, just arrest the politicians, prosecute them, whether it's, go into a whole court process, maybe get rid of that and just go straight to jail. That's what people are clamoring for. So it's kind of scary in that aspect, but it's understandable because if you're seeing so much money, people are embezzling money left and right, and nobody's going to jail, you're asking maybe we need an own Ibrahim to actually come forward and say, no, we're gonna do this one way, my way, and that's the way it is. Even Kwame Nkrumah in a way was kind of, I wouldn't say it was a dictator. It's kind of like Rwanda right now, where he's pushing for nationalistic things. Like let's come together, let's build this and build that without the help of the Western powers, and that's why they got rid of him because they're like, we need your resources, so we're gonna get rid of you. But that's what's kind of happening now, where people are asking, maybe we should go back to dictatorship because are we benefiting from what democracy is giving us? People are saying no. That's why we're seeing so many coups. Madagascar went through its own coup and removed their president. And I think some other countries still are going through that. Even Asian countries are tired of their monarchies and stuff. They're saying, get out. We don't care. We want you to stop fleecing us. So yeah, democracy is kind of, not good. Even America, as you mentioned, is looking very shaky right now
Right.
because, people are saying, well, we're kind of like, Trump is not really looking at Constitution and he's trying to talk about a third term, like what's happening. So yeah, we're kind of sleepwalking into this kind of maybe democracy is not as cracked up as it should be, but there should be more process. I think that our problem in Africa is we don't empower systems and institutions. We kind of look for the heroes to come and save us. I think that's what's happening. So maybe we need to empower more institutions to actually lead us and not people. But again, I think we are always looking for somebody to save us, the next, president elect or whoever to come and save us. I don't know if Ibrahim is the answer, but I think people are looking for somebody to save us. So it's an interesting topic, actually.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, seeing how AES has taken the reins of their countries and like I said, the military coup pathway hasn't always been positive. And this is the first time that we're seeing it be positive. But then it's like you also can't trust anything, right? Because we've also seen so many things and, God forbid, but a year from now they could switch up, right? Like
Hmm.
it could all be an act and we can all be bamboozled and because that's just the world that we're in right now. And so that's why even when talking about some of these things, it's always like, what can we learn from the lessons rather than worshiping the people and idolizing the people? It's like Captain Ibrahim Traore is obviously somebody to be respected, but he's still human,
Yeah,
and so are the people next to him,
yeah,
and we've just seen so many things happen before. So I feel the same way that like, with what you're saying is that like we don't really know. We don't really know if democracy is working. We don't really know. We won't know until we have gone through some time. Captain Ibrahim Traore has only been in power for 4 years or
yeah,
so,
yeah.
or so I mean, and he's had a good run, and now the whole world knows who he is. I was just watching the Joe Budden podcast, and one of the guys, not even Mark Lamont Hill, was like one of the guys who is like the comedian on the show, had on a Captain Ibrahim Traore hoodie, and I'm like, okay, like like people really know who he is and respect what he's doing. So I really do hope for the best for that. But when we see these countries like Cameroon and Togo, um, which both are francophone countries,
Yeah.
along with Burkina Faso. Yeah, I'm curious what a couple months from now is going to look like, and I'm just curious what some of the protests will lead to. Yeah, so I mean, it's something that unfortunately we kind of just got to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I think when it comes to leaders, as you were saying, you want them to kind of put in place, again, I'll talk about power to institutions and stuff. You want to see them put power to institutions before they leave, because in the past, presidents have come in, like Mugabe came in and he was like, hey, I'm power to the people. And then he just started consolidating powers for himself.
Mm,
Even Uganda, the Ugandan president, he came and said, I'm just going to do this for some years and then leave. And now he's been in power for like almost 10, 15 years now. And he wants more power.
mm,
So
mm-hmm.
yeah, you're kind of cautious with these people. Like, yeah, you're human, as they said. You're hoping the power doesn't go to their head and they want to just continue to rule. But yes, the hope is that, they give power to institutions, let the courts and the systems rule, let people give power to the people, essentially. Let them make the decisions and see what they say. But yeah, democracy is kind of shaky. So it should be interesting to see what happens the next couple of years. I mean, I hope Cameroon works out his issues because there's been a protest there. Hopefully tomorrow or this week, what happens is positive. You hope that president just steps down
Yeah,
if he does lose. But we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be a long, long train. Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. All right. I think we can come to our final topic. And this just came through over the weekend. So yes, we all know America is trying to push, you know, trying Trump is trying to do this whole illegal, immigration thing, trying to clamp on it down. And he's trying to basically deport people back to their home countries. But he's also deporting them to other countries that are not people's home countries. So there's this guy, I think his name is, can't remember his name. He's El Salvadoran. The Trump administration is saying that he's in the country illegally and that he needs to, leave or to be deported. So Ghana has been accepting deportees from U.S. because they're West African nationals. But Trump or the Trump administration wanted to push this guy to Ghana, and we said no, he can't come. So now officially they're pushing him to Liberia, who said sure they will take him. So the controversy now is, why are you pushing people who are not of West African ilk to these countries? And the problem is we are kind of at the mercy of the U.S. in West Africa and African countries because we do a lot of deals with them and get a lot of aid. So the question now is, are we becoming this haven for the U.S. to send all these illegal immigrants or supposedly illegal immigrants to our countries just for favor from the administration? What are your thoughts on it?
Um, well, I mean, it has to be, because I know for the West African deportees, many of them were Nigerian, many of them were Togolese, and from my understanding, I believe 6 out of the 11 are suing the Ghana government
Yep.
because there have been accusations that 6 to 10 of them were just dumped by the border. And anybody who lives in Ghana, we know that that is like very likely to happen. You know what I mean? So it's like it, ugh, I mean, I don't even know what the concept of like a detention center looks like here or there, but I think it's one thing to say we're going to take our people back or we're going to take people back and we're going to put them through a detention center with which would mean that they are still considered criminals.
Yep.
But I think that we would need to have an understanding of what that crime is, right? Because now, regardless of them being West African, if they're criminals, also, why are you just dumping them out even in their home countries, right?
Yep.
Like, because it's like, I need to know, like, what was the crime though? Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? If we're talking
True.
about petty theft, okay, cool. But if we're talking about like Like it's
Yeah,
like,
murder and stuff. Yeah.
then we gotta like, and then also like respectfully, it's like, and then if you're gonna bring them to a country, like Ghana's court system is not like in a space where they can even handle that on
Yeah.
top of what is already going on top of just how crime is handled
Yeah.
and bribery and all these other things
Yeah.
exist. And so I don't really understand it outside of it having to do with aid and all those types of things. I mean, because it just reminds me of the anti-LGBTQ bill, and then aid was brought up, and then
Yeah.
all of these other things that get brought up, aid is right behind the conversation.
True.
And I don't understand why would Liberia take this person on or these people on. And again, I think that we're going to start hearing some stories of private prisons being built
Mm.
in African countries, along with U.S. military bases still being built in many African countries. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially on the favorite part, because right now I think Ghana, including some other African countries, we've been placed on this like visa ban list. And of course, if you want to make deals with the administration, Trump administration, you need to accept some favors because the US is kind of transactional now. So what are you giving me in exchange for us bringing these people here? And I think that's what's happening because I think after we accepted some of the detainees, it was announced that, the visa thing had been resolved on our end.
Right.
So yeah, so it's like, okay, this is not a coincidence. It's like just as we accepted this deal, now we're getting some favors. So
Hmm.
I would not be surprised if some story comes out that says Liberia got some special favor. Because, lots of people in Liberia would like to go to America and back and forth. So it would not surprise me that, yeah, they did some deal like, okay, we'll bring some or increase your visa limits or whatever to come to America. And that's happened across the other countries. I think even Uganda, some other countries accepting detainees. So all this, I'm sure there's a lot of back behind the scenes where they're making deals left and right as far as minerals or other resources. So it would not shock me. But again, as you said, it would also surprise me when you start seeing deals like, oh, we're going to build detention centers in Ghana or other places for some of these detainees because America wants to ship a lot of people out. And right now, it's a big, big issue. What happens when we accept them? That we integrate them in society? If they're coming back, what happens a lot? And if we're accepting El Salvadorans or South Americans, how do we integrate them into society? So I think that a lot of people here are kind of wondering what's happening, and I'm sure other countries too are wondering what's happening because it's kind of a big mess, and we're just waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially and I also think that, with the messaging of so many Black Americans leaving America to go to Ghana, I also think that that plays a role in it as well. I think that it's not lost on the Trump administration that as of 2019, over 2,000 Black Americans have received dual citizenship in
Yeah.
Ghana, right? I think even though when we post those videos and stuff, it's like, oh my God, but I always think about like the government is watching,
Mm.
2,000 plus to 2,500 people. And we can even probably assume another 1,000 people who did it outside of those citizenship ceremonies, right?
Yeah.
It's about 3,500 Black Americans in just the 6 years, and I'm not even including people who've been there longer than year of return, but
Mhm.
just in like the 6 years, there are at least 3,000 people who have received scholarships, citizenship. So I think that a lot of this has to do with each other because then when we start talking about crime and all these things and detention centers and building U.S. military bases, um, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the government of Ghana do certain deals that affect the new diaspora coming into the country when
True.
crimes happen. And
True.
now they're going to take over the crime. And now it's like some of these things can lead to a lot of other things. So yeah, and like you said, how do you integrate them into society? How will they be identified? What does that look like? And how do these other countries even how do they now interact with Ghana when having these conversations, right? I wonder what the Ecuador president or prime minister feels about this, and what relationship do they have with Ghana or Liberia in the midst of all of this as well.
Yeah, yeah, true. It's gonna be interesting as far as foreign relations with other countries. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of a big mess. I'm sure there's going to be more detainees being sent to African countries. It would not surprise me if we hear more countries in East Africa, West Africa receiving them. So we just need to prepare. But yeah, it's interesting to see how or what the deals are, because I think there's controversy now in Ghana as far as the deal itself. In Parliament, they're asking for the deal that was supposedly signed. So they want to know more details about that signed MOU deal. So I think it's going to keep reoccurring and find out what's actually happening. And the World Cup is happening next year, and Ghana's qualified. So the question now is, are we getting more beneficial favors? Because again, our foreign minister
Mhm.
is trying to get more visas for people to go to America and support, the national team. So again, there's going to be a lot of, quid pro quos, or, little side things, little benefit that comes from accepting detainees. So I wouldn't be surprised Liberia getting some special deals as well.
I agree.
Okay. But yeah, I think that covers most of the topics we want to cover today. There's so many things happening. It's ridiculous.
I know. So many things have happened. But I think this is good. I think this is good because then that means, the next episode we can get into a lot more things as well.
Yeah, a lot of things happening with China, with Galamsey in Ghana. We're still having issues there. Yeah, lots of things happening. I think even Saudi Arabia. Oh my gosh, there's so many things
There's a
happening.
lot.
There's a lot happening.
No,
But
there
yeah,
is.
we'll try to cover as much as possible.
Yeah, so like, comment, subscribe. Let us know how you guys feel in the comments. We want to see, whatever feedback we get, and then we'll definitely respond in the next episode.
Awesome. Looking forward to the next one for sure.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
All right.